if they want to. Talk don't bother me. I want the whole wide world to know that I love.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guest, Maryloo, is going to be here momentarily. And she was a victim of a delayed subway line, but she's on her way.
Not a subway disaster.
Not a subway disaster, so she's on her way and will be here momentarily. And she's going to talk about her recent trip to Lebanon. She just returned, and Maryloo will tell us the story of spending about a week traveling all over southern Lebanon and seeing damage from the war and talking to people, and she has her own unique views, and we're looking forward to having that.
Oh, and I thought she was just in Beirut, so that's interesting to find out she traveled all over the southern part of the country.
Well, I got some emails that pointed to that. We'll have to ask her to get the final word. And,
well, I look forward to hearing about her trip.
Right. And yes, and she'll be here momentarily. In the meantime, well, the hot season is upon us. And
we've had beautiful weather. It's a little bit colder today, but other than that, it's
still
been
pretty
gorgeous,
warm for this time of year, I have to say. I've never seen anything quite like it, although in New York it does occasionally get warm around the first of the year. But I guess this is one of those global warming winters, and we'll see where that leads us.
The phone number up tonight?
Oh, yes, we have the phone number
good.
up,
Yeah,
212-757-1538. We will take your calls.
Yeah, we hope you'll join the discussion about Lebanon and the Middle East that we're going to have tonight with Maryloo Souied. Is that how her name is pronounced?
I'll have to ask her.
Oh, okay. Who's recently returned from a trip to Lebanon.
Yes. And we'll find out the whole story once she gets here. But
now, I was there with Daddy about 2 years ago.
So you've been there?
Yes, but before...
Twice, right? In your life?
I was also there as a child in the 60s.
Sure.
But,
so you've seen a lot of changes in that time.
Oh, tremendous changes, very big changes, and there's been big changes since I was there 2 years ago. So I'm looking forward to hearing.
Oh, great! Invite her in. How you doing? Come on in, have a seat, Maryloo.
We're on.
We're on. Welcome to Let Them Talk.
So we're glad you're here. I'll take this because she's going to come at it that way.
Right,
Set your
and
stuff down
we were just
and have
introducing you and telling a little bit about your experiences, and I'm just going to clip this on.
Tell us how you pronounce your last name.
Oh, it's Souied, Souied.
Souied, okay.
Souied.
I was saying Souied.
That. All right, I think that's good. Let me just tell us a little bit about your trip and how you came to be going to Lebanon and visiting this country at this time.
Well, it was a weird coincidence because there was this conference we went to that was sponsored by different organizations in Lebanon, like communists and Islamists and stuff, and they're trying to work together, and socialists, so it was anti-war.
So you went for a particular conference, an event. Oh, great.
What was the conference? What was the name of the conference?
Support the Resistance.
And what resistance are you talking about when you say support the resistance?
The people in Lebanon when they fought back against the Israeli incursion in there and that whole setup with that Israeli soldier getting captured.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit how what did you see while you were there? What parts of the country did you travel in? Well, let's do a little bit of a background on you. We've known each other for quite a long time.
But we went to South Lebanon. That's the first area we went to.
And you're basically an activist here based in New York.
Right.
Pretty much for many years you've been an activist in many different causes and movements.
Well, I know Maryloo through the housing struggle.
Right, and we did lots of stuff with the squatters. We did a lot of things.
Our building joined in coalition with the squatters. Maryloo was one of the people I met. So.
Right. And so
that's grassroots. I like that.
We have a long history, and you've been working for various progressive causes throughout your entire adult life, as long as I've known you through the 80s and 90s, and we've had a lot of adventures together. Mm-hmm. And so I know you've always had a particular interest in the Middle East situation. And have you been there before? Have you traveled in this region before?
I went in 1995 to Palestine.
I see.
And that was totally like just visiting and checking out the whole scene and everything. It wasn't like a conference or anything.
More like
tour. Lebanon. This trip to Lebanon was a trip because we saw the devastation in the south, and that was horrific.
Right. That's what we were going to ask you about. So now, you go there. When did you go about? What? A month ago? 2 weeks ago?
We went November 15th till December 12th.
So you were there
Oh,
for
you
a
were there
while,
almost a month.
almost a
Oh,
month.
that's wonderful.
Wow. And where did you spend most of that time?
In Beirut, and we delayed the trip because we wanted to stay and check out the demonstrations against the U.S.-backed government.
So you were at those demonstrations.
Yeah,
that
from
occurred.
December 1st they started. We were there until the 11th, and we flew out the next day.
Right. Now we're going to talk about that. And
But you spent most of your time in Beirut, but you also traveled in southern Lebanon.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's
Like a half a week there.
Because Daddy and I were there 2 years ago, and we were mainly in Beirut and slightly north of Beirut. So,
Oh, wow. 2 years ago? Wow.
so before
all this
two
changes.
major events in Lebanon, before what they called the Cedar Revolution after Hariri was assassinated, and then this latest Israeli conflict, and so that's all happened since we were there.
Oh, wow. That's a trip, because that whole Hariri thing, they still talk about that, too. And everybody blames, well, the right-wingers and the pro-U.S., of course the United States, blame Iran and Syria. It's sort of like, almost like the dog ate my homework scenario. Like, who did it? Oh, Iran and Syria, it's their
Right.
fault. They're behind the assassination or the terror bombing
Right.
or whatever.
So when you were, what was? I mean, there's so much I want to ask you. Let's talk about your trip to the south part of the country first, because you were there for 3-4 days,
Yes.
basically. What did you see? What areas did you travel to, and what did you see?
We went to Jebel, and that's a big town that was totally destroyed and bombed out by the Israelis. And this other town, Aydashad, that we went there at night, and it looked so apocalyptic. So it was like just people with their cameras and stuff, and the bus lights, and people with the camping lights and whatnot.
Really? Just
So
living
it's
out.
tragic what happened to the
People are just living out in tents and
Living in
shacks,
tents
and
and
lean-tos,
in
things
the
like
one room that is, you can actually live in that's not all bombed out. Like one room in the house, they all cram into that if one room survived.
that. Where did you stay?
We stayed at this one guy's house in the south of Lebanon.
Someone's house who had escaped the
Yeah,
Blitz.
that town wasn't too bombed out, the town we were in.
Now, did you drive, or did you rent a car, or did you have a driver? Or
Oh, our friend has an art student friend that
how
drove
they
us
drove you
around.
around? Okay, because
Two art friends.
the traffic in Lebanon was impressive to
Oh,
me.
yeah.
I would be very much afraid to drive there.
So did you have any problems traveling? Or checkpoints and any problems at all with authorities?
No, not at all.
Being Americans and traveling around?
No, not at all. It was great.
Were you particularly asked for your passport, or did you feel bugged because you were an
just
American?
the UN going into South Lebanon.
That's interesting.
It was
So you
near
said-
the Hiam prison. We went to visit the Hiam prison, and they had this giant checkpoint.
What's the Hiam prison?
That's
Explain
where the Israelis have this prison there in this hill in south of Lebanon, and also the South Lebanon Army participated in the torture sessions there.
And the South Lebanon Army were the occupation army that during the time when southern Lebanon was under Israeli control.
Oh, yeah, and they totally worked with the state of Israel and the United States and all the right-winger phalangist types and whatnot.
And they had this prison.
Yes.
And what is the prison now?
Well, it was a museum after Israel stepped out of Lebanon, and Hezbollah and the whole crew down in South Lebanon turned it into a museum of like torture and all this kind of stuff that Israel did to people in
I
there.
see.
And then a lot of these South Lebanese torturers and death squad members and whatnot, they got by the Lebanese government, they got like less than 6 month prison sentence after the fact, and then they would be let go before the 6 months, and that way they don't come up on their record that they've been in prison for torturing people or whatever they get in prison for, collaborating with Israel. And then they get jobs in the police and military. And one torture victim was driving his car, and he sees a traffic cop. He goes, "Oh wow, that guy tortured me in the prison,"
That's a shame.
Sick stuff
So
like
they're
that.
just walking around free. They
Didn't
were able
Israel
to
also
get
bomb
minimal
the
punishment.
prison after, during this latest conflict to destroy the museum?
They did.
Yeah, I thought I had heard
And we
that.
went there, and they tried to piece it back together.
And do you think that this was targeted? Because I got some emails on the list we were on, and you seemed to express you thought it had been purposely targeted because it was a museum of
Oh
these
yeah,
days.
yeah,
I
because
would
they
say
had
that's
horrific.
commonly
Yeah, they're
believed,
like, "Oh my God, you're exposing our brutality to the world."
That's interesting.
Now, did you go to the
bulldoze
museum in
things.
Beirut?
No.
Because that's a really interesting place that also has like entire exhibits of destroyed artifacts from the Civil War. So Lebanon's had a lot of warfare and a lot of tragedy in terms of destruction.
We have a number, 212-757-1538, and we'll take your calls if you have any questions for Maryloo or need to know something, have some questions
you've been
about
to Lebanon
the situation
and
in
wanna
Lebanon. You can talk
discuss
about
it.
your opinions about what's happened there.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask was about the Constitution of Lebanon, because I don't know if everybody knows, but politically, the way Lebanon's set up has to do with religious divisions. Like the president has to be a Christian, and each different highest level, it's required that they come from a certain religion. But also in their constitution, if a certain number of delegates to the legislature resign or die, then the whole government collapses. And right now, aren't they one legislator away from the government collapsing there?
Yeah, a bunch of people resigned. Like,
I thought that was the United States Congress.
No, it's Lebanon.
No, it's Lebanon. Oh, okay.
But it's interesting that that's in their constitution and that they're sitting on that brink right now.
oh yeah, and plus a lot of people don't like the government because they're totally in the United States' pocket and whatnot. And some people in the Lebanese government did some foul things, like this man Ahmed Fat is his name. He was like the interior minister, what have you, some sort of governmental post, high up in there. And he instructed his Lebanese army folks to serve tea to the Israeli invaders during this summer's war.
Oh, dear.
And they're like, what a traitor, you're sitting there serving these invaders tea. That's sick.
That's symbolic, I guess. It's beyond just the idea of the mercy of giving someone tea. It's symbolic of welcoming them.
Yeah, it's like a
Right.
hospitality thing.
Hospitality, right.
Like, welcome to my house. It's like,
Right, so that wasn't seen very well by others.
yeah. People
Other
were like,
groups there.
man, they're like, damn, they should.
Right. So now you saw some of this destruction that occurred down there, and we were discussing that South Lebanon destruction, and Maryloo has just recently returned from Lebanon. Tell us about Beirut and the capital city. Did you see, was there as much destruction there? I know that I saw on TV areas that seemed that they had been hit pretty hard. Were they still
The
still
southern
out of
suburbs,
damage?
yeah.
The southern suburbs?
Yeah, my
Did you see
friend-
some of that?
Oh, yeah, and Dahieh in the southern suburbs, they totally obliterated it, and they tried to bomb out the TV station of Hezbollah called Al-Manar, because they're scared of that TV station. It has 200 million viewers worldwide, and it exposes what's going on. It's like, the United States gives Israel all these cluster bombs to drop all over Lebanon. They have been forever, and they drop them in the Litani River, and they explode if you touch them when they're in the river, and they land on the crops, and all this kind of stuff. And
Right. Are there still problems with, with
still.
that? With folks trying to clean up the cluster bomb ammunition that went all over the place?
yeah, they have posters all over saying this is what they all look like, and they're fascinating to kids. Kids go, oh wow, what's that? And
Sure.
Terrible.
in the people out in the fields, like banana trees have this cone-like thing, and a lot of them would drop in there, and people go pick their bananas from the tree, and it would explode, And they're made in this country, and they ship them to Israel, so they have a lot of mad anger at the United States
Did
government.
you see any exploded ordnance or other ordnance that have been captured that you could look at and see like a U.S. imprint on it or anything like that?
Oh, we saw these Israeli kind of vehicles by Keon Prison, and we're looking around at different things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, returning back to Beirut, you were there during these protests that started on
Yes.
December 1st. Can you tell me what that was like?
Well, that
did you
was
know they were
amazing.
coming? How did you know they were coming?
Well, they were going to happen, and then that guy, Jamal of the Philander's crew, he got assassinated, and they tried to blame Iran or Syria or even Hezbollah.
That happened while you were down there?
Yeah.
What was the reaction in the streets that day when that happened? Were
Well,
people shocked, or was it
a lot of people were like, ooh, this could bring on some trouble, and then
Right.
a lot of people got skittish about civil war, and then a lot of people actually at the street demonstrations, they told us, we don't want to have a civil war here, because they had Christians and the Shiites there and the Druze and all kinds of everybody, different religions. They had communists at the demonstrations, massive, huge things. I mean, the one on the Sunday before I left was 2.5 million. That's the,
In a population of what, 10 million?
4
million.
4 million. So you're talking about
About 4
more than
million.
half the population of the
It's about
country
4 million.
is at a protest.
There's a lot of unity but across religious lines.
Oh, we're getting a phone call now. I don't know if you want to
We are
try
getting
it.
a call. Well, we can give it a shot. All right. Welcome to Let Them Talk.
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how you
How you
doing?
doing?
Okay. My only comment is basically, I really think I'll reserve my sympathy for the people of Iraq. I think what happened in Lebanon is unfortunate, but, I think they basically were responsible for starting the war. And, what else can you say? I mean...
You mean by the kidnapping of the Israeli soldier?
Well, I think that when you have part of their government, the legitimately elected government of Lebanon called for the destruction of Israel, it just seems that that's the Arab way of doing things. They put up the hyperbole, and then they back it up. And I think that, the whole Middle East is a common sense free zone So where there's no separation of church and state, whether it's Jewish or Arab, so what are you going to do? I think that our sympathy, should be reserved for the poor and, and the homeless of our country. And I think what we learned in our is basically let's leave them alone to work out their own problems, for better or worse. We don't really know better or worse for them, right?
Well, that I could agree with.
And in any case, I think it's good to have a discussion.
Right.
But unfortunately, someone like President Carter is really throwing a monkey wrench into the works, because I think he always had a grudge against the Israelis. So
I've seen a lot of talk shows about that, and I have to say that's a controversial position in every community. Even conservative talk shows are embracing Jimmy Carter, as well as liberal talk shows, and he's getting a lot of support for what he said in a lot of different areas, even though there has been a lot of criticism. So it's hard to just say he's totally he's totally dissing the Israelis or dissing anybody, because he has a long history of support for Israel and the peace plan.
And as far as Lebanon starting the war, Hezbollah, actually the United States and Israel were planning this thing a year ago. It even came out in the New Yorker, and this Hezbollah thing is like, how the heck would a Hezbollah person get into Israel and hijack their soldier? I don't think so. So Israel must have been snooping around in Lebanon, sending their little soldiers over there like they send their little aircrafts doing their sonic boom. So the soldier brought it on himself. In Lebanon, they have a right to defend themselves, and Israel has no right to kill over 1,000 people and destroy mad amounts of homes and towns. That is terrorism. When I think about terrorism, Israel and America, they're the terrorists.
Well, look, you should, first of all, I respect your opinion, but don't try to put words into other people's mouths. And look, let's face it. The Arab side, whatever it is, they are equally guilty of planning, behind the scenes also. And let's face it, the Jews and the Muslims have been killing each other since before they were Jews and Muslims.
That's not true.
Israel was a total U.S. puppet anyway. They're America's pit bull.
But I wanted to ask.
That's a terribly inaccurate view of history.
But it's good that he brought up the Carter thing, because there was something I wanted to ask you about that. And that is that the interview that, I haven't read the book, I want to admit that right off, but the interview that I saw with President Carter, he said that one of the things he felt should change immediately was that the whole international community had withdrawn support, like humanitarian support for Palestine, because of them voting in Hamas. And he felt that that was unfair. If you're asking people to have a democracy and have elections, then how can you say, like, punish a whole culture of people for voting for the person you don't like? So I wondered how what your position was on that, and if you had read his book or not.
I haven't read his book, but when I was at the demonstrations in Beirut and just talking to Lebanese folks in general, Christian, Muslim, communist, Democrat, whatever, people expressed to me that you guys in the United States, you always run your mouth about democracy, but then when they have the elections in Palestine, they totally voted Hamas in by a landslide, and then the Western people that run their mouth about democracy all of a sudden have a hissy fit and decide to pull up economic strangulation. On a microphone, like that. Strangle them, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Were you surprised when Hamas won with your knowledge of the Middle East?
Not really.
Okay, just curious,
Because they got social services. That's, the thing about Hezbollah, too. A lot of people have a lot of love for them. Even the Christian folks there, like the Aoun, one of the participants and organizers of the demonstration, and Hezbollah was, and the Amal movement, they all got together and they worked on this at these demonstrations.
Considering that in the past, Beirut and Lebanon were almost synonymous, were almost like, world jokes for disunity and civil war and everybody being at each other's throats. Now to see that turned around and to see so many disparate groups that used to hate each other marching together is very interesting. And what is it that they're seeing happening? Is there a belief or strong belief of a United States-Israeli attempt to try and take away their independence? Limit their independence? And what is the role of Syria in that? Is the same sort of fear that Syria is also trying to take away their independence?
Yeah, a lot of people more that I've talked to, they mainly distrust the United States and Israel because Israel, backed up by the United States, had always waged war on them militarily and come in there and invade them and do horrific human rights abuses and war crimes. So they, Syria didn't do that, but Syria, a lot of people are like, you have no right to be here either, you know?
told me that the Syrians would take people's homes.
Yeah.
And they'd come into a town and say, well, you have to move because we're going to make this the command post and where our military officers are going to live. And of course, that's never popular with people to be evicted for the sake of a military.
It's not exactly what a progressive force would do either, you know.
Well, do you think that there's hope for Lebanon? Because
I do, because when I was at these demonstrations, even like people were like just in unity, and they all the different people from all the different groups pretty much had the same view about we don't want to have any civil war. You know, a lot of them were young too, were really small when it went on, but the middle-aged ones, like ones our age and whatnot, they went through it as teenagers and young adults.
That's right.
And they all were like, no, we don't want this to go down.
Yeah, it was a 15-year-long war.
Yeah.
So for me, at my age, it would have been from the time I was 15 till I was 30.
And they get worried about
terrible time.
Lebanon turning into Iraq, and they are very politically aware, and they know
What do you mean turning into Iraq? You mean
a civil war? Because they think that the United States and Israel continue to mess around with Lebanon. You couldn't put it past the United States to try to instigate a civil war in Lebanon if it serves their interests. You know, like in Iraq. I mean, there weren't hairballs going on between Shiites and Sunnis.
What do people think about the U.S. involvement in Iraq? What is the feeling of a wide variety of people, you know, throughout?
They want the oil there, and the United States wants to be the dictator of the world.
Did you meet anybody who said they did a good thing going in there? And
no.
Did you meet anybody? Not one person?
Not one. Except the guy around the candy store. He says it was sort of good, but he had questions about it, but now he thinks it's really wrong.
Right.
And it's all about oil, and like the United States wants to run the world. That's how, even like the Christian lady that ran this one place we stayed at, this hostel or whatever, she's like, you know, I'm not into Islamic fundamentalist thing, but Hezbollah's not really into that. They're into a coalition. They don't want to run the entire government. You know, they want to have a big old coalition where all these others are out in the streets protesting.
Well, that's what I want.
Because they represent a part of the people. They don't represent the entire country, and they understand.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask about was the whole religious mix in politics. As we were talking about before, there are requirements under the constitutional Lebanon, but what do you think about the religious people and their ability to have a coalition? I mean, do you think that...
I think it could be possible, because all the ones that resigned and whatnot, they were a Christian, Muslim kind of crew, and I think they could have religious unity, and some of the socialists and communists we talked to, they'd like to see a class unity, because this kind of breaks down into class, too. Because the people that come out of Hezbollah and whatnot, they're like working class and poor, and the Shiites are the poorest economically, religious-wise, you know? But some people say it's not.
You bring out the left, you know, in Lebanon. How strong, how popular is the left? Is it minuscule, or do they have a following? Do they have unions? Or how do they express their power there?
One group, the Lebanese Communist Party, they had a march of 25,000 people. Oh, during the rallies. Like on the
within
Saturday.
the rally and stuff.
And then they came and joined up with the rally.
I see.
And there's unions there, and then the Party of Aoun, the Free Patriotic Movement, one of the Christian organizations, they have unions.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the days of these protests. What was it like to be, I guess, in downtown Beirut? Is this where these were? And
yes, in two squares. It was giant. They had to
when you showed up, did you go into the midst of all the people? Were you able to go through it, or was it just too dense?
Some days it was too jammed. You couldn't get through it at all.
All right. You just could come up to the back of it and just see all these people.
Yeah, it filled up two different squares and then all the side streets. It was like a giant, like even CNN said it, but you know, they of course support the pro-U.S. government, but they said it was like a giant Woodstock without the sex and drugs. That's CNN International.
This is Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Joan Musi.
And our guest is Maryloo Souied. And she has just returned from Lebanon, where she spent a month traveling in Beirut and throughout southern Lebanon and seeing results of the war against the Lebanese people and how, despite the destruction, the Lebanese people seem to be yet again, pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and finding some basis of unity and reestablishing their nation status, their right to having a country and a nation and to be independent. They're free. And we find that interesting here on Let Them Talk. And we're here to take your calls at 212-757-1538. That's 212-757-1538. We have a few more minutes, and hopefully you might have some questions for Maryloo or the rest of us, and hopefully we have a variety of folks who can call in and have some different perspectives that we can relate to in the next couple of minutes. Are there going to be any events? Are you going to be speaking at any events? Will the folks who went on this tour be appearing at things?
Yeah, my friend Sharon, she's trying to set up something in WBA. Make it cool.
Oh, okay, in the morning.
Did you take pictures? Are there photographs or a slideshow or anything?
Yeah, I got to get some copies from my friend who went along with me.
Great, because that'd be great to see a slideshow.
Yeah,
And my favorite quote of all, from all the protesters I met, this one guy who fixed motorcycles as a living. He says, you know how Condoleezza Rice talks about that America wants a new Middle East? He pointed to this giant crowd and campfires and people cooking, barbecues. He's like, this is the new Middle East. And it was great.
Representing all these people together,
Yes.
all these different unities, all these different groups that are in unity.
Yes.
And it puts a light, because the way they talk about Iraq is that somehow Shias and Sunnis and different groups have these impossible gulfs.
Everybody
between
thinks the
them.
United States started that civil war in Iraq. You can just imagine it. They're probably starting it in Palestine, too.
Right.
Well, people
Or
are
Israel
often
working
surprised.
together.
What would be the basis of some sort of agreement or true peace between Lebanon and Israel, for example? I mean, is that ever possible?
Well, Israel needs to get out of the Sheba farms. That's one bit of South Lebanon they still have their claws in, and it's really juicy water-wise, so of course Israel wants that. They want the Litani River, too. They were trying to get that, but, they dropped a bunch
The
of
water
cluster
supplies.
bombs,
There's a lot of fighting over water supplies, the sources of water.
so the settlers can water their lawns and whatnot. So everybody down in the south says they're like,
All right,
"Oh,
let
God."
them talk. Again, 212-757-1538.
I was going to say that people are often surprised when I tell them that a lot of our personal friends over there are interreligious marriages. We have a lot of friends where there's a Muslim husband and a Christian wife, or, there's a lot of mixing because it's a very small country. This is not like the United States. It's much smaller, but a beautiful place. I'm sure
it
you
is.
think that
And the
too.
people are proud and they have great resolve. Like, I met this one guy in this town, Adishah, that was totally bombed out, right? His niece got killed. His younger brother got killed. He was like, I'm on it. We're going to fight Israel and whatnot. We can't let people step on us like this. And he says, you know what? When they attacked, it made us a bit stronger when the Israelis attacked this summer. But if they attack again, we'll get stronger yet. And we will win like in Vietnam. And I just thought that was great. I was like, yeah, being an American and hearing that, 'cause I'm proud the Vietnamese gave America a kick down, and
So
Lebanon.
there's a general feeling, we're coming to the end here, but the general feeling was that who won the war? Was there a feeling that any side won the war between Israel and Lebanon?
Well, Israel certainly got back down. They feel pride in that. Like, the people of Lebanon stood up, and Hezbollah and the Lebanese Communist Party people, there was martyrs from there that died fighting the Israelis, and then the Amal movement, some of their people died fighting, actual trying to defend Lebanon from these invaders,
Maryloo, thank you very much
thanks
for
so
coming
much
in.
for coming.
Thanks for this great
Appreciate
show.
your
Very
report.
interesting. Yes. And we'll see you next week.
All right.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.